Hello and welcome to the Evolve Founder Series. My name is Maria Mackel and I'm delighted to be part of this Founder Series where we talk to trailblazing women. And today we're super excited to be talking to Joanne Hessian, who is an entrepreneur, a leadership expert, and also an author. And we're very lucky to have her talking to us today because she's had an interview in both Forbes and the New York Times. So thank you, Joanne, for coming along to talk to us in our Evolve series. Now, Evolve is really like an educational platform to help entrepreneurs. It's a community interest company, a not-for-profit. So it's an educational platform to help entrepreneurs and leaders to create success. It's predominantly female, but we welcome male and female. So I think we'll delve right in, Joanne, and would like to hear really right back from the start. Tell us all about, your work and how you got started in business. So we're excited to hear your whole story.
Well, thanks for inviting me on, Mairead. It's great to see you again and get the opportunity to chat to you and all of your community as well. I like nothing better actually than chatting to entrepreneurs. So this is not hard work at all. So right back to where I started, I did business out of school. I did business in college and did a master's in business. And then went to work. There were no jobs, it was the early 1990s and there were no jobs at all. So I applied to some of the big accountancy firms that were hiring to get interview practice, and then got offered a job by Ernst & Young. And so I took that at the grand sum of £6,000 a year, Mairead, as it was back then. And I took that and got some great experience with Ernst & Young, absolutely fantastic experience, because I was out, on the audit team, looking at other businesses. And there are things that I still use now that I learned then, but accountancy was not for me, and going down the chartered accountancy route was not for me. So I did a U-turn out of there, went back to work for UCD, got a job there, managing their master's programs, as well as researching with the strategy professor, which I absolutely loved. And
the business school, Joanne, was it?
Yeah, I worked in the Smurfit School. And so I had studied there and then went back a couple of years later to work there, which was fantastic in my 20s because I'd no exams to do and I was hanging out with all the master's students. It was a great place to be working.
But all academic background then for starting a business. So you had the academic background for starting a business. You'd learned how to run a business academically.
Yeah, I certainly learned a lot, but I think I didn't know, Mairead, how much I actually had learned until at 25, I started to really wonder, is business for me? I had gone into a big corporate. Now I was in a university surrounded by business people, brilliant business people. And I sort of felt there was something missing for me and there was a pull for something more purposeful coming for me. And so I applied to work for the Irish overseas aid agencies. And I decided to go with Concern Worldwide in the end. And I got posted to the Rwandan border after the Rwandan genocide. Wow. And why I say, amazing. Look, there's nothing like being catapulted out of your parents' home with carpets under you to the middle of nowhere, living on the side of a refugee camp with no water and no running water and no inside facilities that you'd be used to. And not only that, really meeting people and working with people every day that had such a different life experience to what I had had. So I think that's where I realized how much I had learned, especially in my master's program. I hadn't got to put it to use in before that, but I really realized I had learned a lot. I also realized, Mairead, two massive learnings for me, and a lot of learnings there on that just over a year that I was there. And the first was how lucky I'd been. I had got free education the whole way through. My school had been a non-fee paying school. I'd gone to college. My master's was paid by the European Fund. So, I had got all this free education. And the one thing in the camps that I really thought about a lot was education was about the only thing that someone couldn't steal from you. If you could learn something, it was in your head and nobody could steal it. And there was a lot of obviously stealing going on and other things because people had nothing. nothing. Like a cardboard box was extremely valuable because it could be used as so to carry something. It could be used as a table in your house that was 4 poles and a plastic sheet. So education, I realized the power of education and the value of education. That became very obvious to me. And then the other thing that I really learned there was how lucky we are to be on this island. And just birth lottery, you know, that I got here and somebody else got a Rwandan refugee camp. So
I always say to my children, you know, that what my father would have always said to us is education is easy carried, and it's so true. And even no matter how privileged of a background you're in or not, you know, it's your own sense of achievement having that education. Nobody can do that for you. Nobody can take it away from you. So I certainly understand where you're coming from there, and how lucky we are. And we do a lot of complaining, but how lucky we actually are on this.
Yeah, I'd completely taken it for granted. Completely taken both those things for granted.
That's at a young age, wasn't it? So I'm sure that influenced your next steps.
It did. I very much was sure after working in the charitable sector that wasn't where I wanted to stay working, that I wanted to get back into the business sector. I did love business. And there were a lot of things about business that I really loved. And so I came back and I worked for a small company for just over a year. And then they asked me to become a director of that company. And I had to make that decision because I knew I was going to go and work for myself. So rather than go down that sort of long-term route with them, I jumped a little bit quicker and said, actually, I'm going to go and set up on my own, and set up my own education company, really working on giving entrepreneurs the tools, the practical tools, not just the sort of the 4 P's of marketing, but what does that actually mean? How do I actually research my market? What do I actually have to do? And how do I price a product? And how do I sell? And all these practical things. So I set up the Entrepreneurs Academy at the time, which is now still exists over 20 years later. To get people started.
I'm fortunate to be on one of your courses with AIB Bank, and so I can definitely vouch for a fabulous experience, because it was one of the first, I suppose, experiences I had of dipping my toe into personal development, was going on that course with AIB a few years ago. And still we have a great, I mean, first of all, it's the practical skills, as you talk about, that you learn, and they're so good for any business, really. So I can certainly vouch for that. But there's also the network of people, because you're in a really safe space with a whole lot of other entrepreneurs that you can share ideas with. So it was a great experience. Thank you. And that's how we met, Joanne. So that was brilliant.
Yeah, that's it. And an amazing bunch of women that were on that program. And I mean, really, it's, I like nothing better than working with groups of people and helping people unlock where they are now, and just sort of opening the doors to the resources that they already have. I mean, some of it in the Entrepreneurs Academy are the practical tools of how do I fill out a legal sheet or do a cash flow statement. But a lot of what I'm really interested in now is the person and the individual, and how, how we're all so much more fully resourced than we actually realize that we are. So I love all that bit, which is really how we lead.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah, it is. So
I set up a successful business then. So what's next then?
So I actually set up a second business a year or two later that now works in over 20 countries. But it's a gorgeous business. But it's kind of very niche consultancy, working with business schools in universities, and we've worked in over 20 countries with that. And sometimes for entrepreneurs, you sort of think, Collie, I couldn't possibly set that up, but actually it is amazing how if you think it, you can make it happen. And
what is that business? Is that the accreditation business?
Yeah, that's called QED, the accreditation experts. So we are now the longest established business helping business schools to get internationally accredited. So we get them international accreditation marks. So UCD was the very first business school that we worked with. And we helped them get the top 3, the European, the British, and the American accreditation. It's part of the ranking. It's like the rankings that they get. And then I got invited, once I did it in UCD, I got invited to France to help a business school there. And then my brother at the same time, who was in law in Dublin, approached me and said, you know, I'd really like to change jobs. Can I come and work with you? And I said, well, actually, I think we can build a business out of this. So he joined that business and we built a consultancy out of that at the same time.
Fabulous. So fabulous.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial spirit right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they do say you have to go through a whole lot of challenges before you finally, you know, find the success. So I'm sure there was like different wee steps along the way that would have, you know, either challenged you or helped you in that direction. So is there any specific sort of pinch points that you can think on that journey that, you know, opened your eyes to, you know, the next stage or anything like that?
Absolutely. You know this, Mairead. I'm 51 now. I hit challenges every day. So it's just a matter of which ones I pick. But, you know, I think one of the biggest challenges for me was in my 30s. I was about 10 years in business. I was working really hard. I had a great team, but if I'm very honest with myself, I'd sort of look at the team and go, oh, if he'd just do his job, I can just do mine. And if she'd just do her job, I can do mine. And I didn't realize that I was actually managing quite well and that people were doing the right thing in the right way at the right time. So the right person was in the right job, doing the right thing at the right time, but I wasn't leading at all. So when I went to create any real change in my business, nobody was really following me. I was like pushing a rock up a hill. And so I took some time, only a couple of days out of my business in my 30s and, you know, left my husband at home with 3 under the age of 4 and said, I need to take some time out to really think about, is this the right business for me? And I read a whole load of Jim Collins's material and I worked out what were my own personal values. And I don't know about you, Mairead, but after having a whole load of children, I'd sort of forgotten a tiny bit of who I was. And so it was good for me to sit down and sort of go, okay, these are my personal values. And it's not that family and children and all my extended family I wouldn't die for them. Of course I would. They are right at the top of my list. But there are other things that Joanne Hessian needs to do. And it was great for me to get that space and time to work that out for myself, that if I'm not learning every day, you know, it's just not worth it for me. So learning is a big part of my core values. And the second one is about maximizing potential. I have to feel like I am every day and every week and every year that I'm doing the most that I can do in the best way that I can do it. And also the fact that my businesses are helping people to maximize their potential. That gave me great confidence when I took that time out to go, okay, these are my core values. It's all about learning. It's all about maximizing potential. And these are the right businesses for me to be in. So that was a real pivot point for me because I think I would have given up my businesses. It was too hard at that time. And then I read a whole load of books and realized that the way I was working totally wasn't working and that I needed to work on myself more. I needed to get an awful lot better than nobody really, I wouldn't have followed myself, you know, so I couldn't have expected anybody else to be following me. So that was my leadership. I was managing very well, managing people, but I wasn't leading them well. So that's when I started to work on my leadership. And that was another big pivot point for me in, I suppose, in where it's led me to now, where I've stepped out of both those businesses to 100% lead a nonprofit now.
Well, I think you make a very good point. I think about, you know, as a young mother, I suppose you were sort of losing your own sense of values, that you felt that, you know, you had to take time out. And I think that's probably a very important point for a lot of women in business, that they do have to remember that what their own core purpose is within their own life, be that in business or whatever. So it's very interesting to hear you talking about that. And then you know, I know that, you know, we'll hear all about your new journey with John Maxwell and that whole leadership thing, which is really obviously that challenge that you went through, or that few days that you took off in your 30s, has opened up your eyes to that whole leadership journey. And I mean, I've certainly always heard I'd be more personally, I think I wouldn't be good at managing. I've never been a good manager, but I do believe that being a leader, it's a leader's job to share the vision. And it's like a challenge to constantly be sharing that vision with your people so that they see where you're going as an organization. So I think that brings us really into, you know, for you to share maybe your journey with Lift then, and meeting John Maxwell and how you get in. And I was part of that journey at the start as well, and, you know, hope to continue with you on that journey, because I really believe in, you know, what you're doing as an organisation, Lift Ireland. But tell us all about that, and how you and John got connected, and all about the values-based leadership, which.
Yeah. So I April 2016, somebody recommended, another female entrepreneur in the UK recommended a book to me called Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. And I downloaded it on Audible, and I went out, walking one day, listening to it. And it was by John Maxwell. I'd never heard of him before. And I just really liked the way he spoke. And it made me think, Ollie, I'd love to meet this man. And sort of a couple of things, as they do, happened all around the same time. I met my parents the next day. My parents would be big influencers in my life in very positive ways. And my dad said to me, Joanne, you should really be doing executive coaching. And it had sort of come out of nowhere. And I said, I'm not an executive coach. And he said, well, you really should. And then I'm part of a female entrepreneurial group that has been getting together since 2007. And one of them in that group contacted me literally in the same week and said, you ask the best questions. You should really be doing leadership coaching and so on. So all these things started to play around in my head. Anyway, I decided to head to the US to meet John Maxwell, and he was putting on some training. So I decided to do the training with him. I didn't really know anything about it, but that started a journey for me of understanding an awful lot more about values-based leadership and about the importance of character in how we lead. It's all about being bigger on the inside rather than being bigger on the outside. And I really like him as a teacher. He's become a very good friend of mine. And I have learned an awful lot from him. But I think probably around the same time in 2016, I had got to the stage in my business as Mairead where really the teams were so amazing there, they could run it themselves. And so I could kind of play around with a few things. And I was invited into the corporates to talk to them about entrepreneurs and how entrepreneurs lead. And I was doing a lot of this and I was enjoying it. And I was talking to them all the time about, it's about character. Character builds trust or character destroys trust. And it's trust that makes your teams perform really well. Whether you're in a small, tiny organization or a bigger organization, trust is the oil, it's the fuel behind it. So anyway, I knew I wanted to do something not just in corporates, but also in the not-for-profit sector, in our charities, in our schools. And so in 2016 and early 2017, I decided I'm going to put up my hand and say, well, I know I could get better at how I'm leading. And if I look around on this island, we don't have to look too far in our media across business or sports or other sectors or, church or charities. And we see examples of really poor behavior. So I thought, well, I'm going to put my hand up and say, well, I know I could lead better in my life. And I'll invite other people to do the same. So that October in 2017, 30 CEOs joined us in the Shelburne. And we had a lunch and I basically put my neck on the line and said, we're good in this country, but we're not good enough. And when are we going to put our hands up and say, we could be better? And that whole group said, okay, we'll come behind you and we'll do something. And that led then on to us launching Lift Ireland in May the following year. And I had thought initially that with Lift Ireland, we were going to run training programs. That's what I thought we were going to do, to talk about leadership and so on. But John Maxwell was going into Paraguay in the September of 2017, and he invited me to go with him, and I did. 45 of us went. And he was using a roundtable method at the time that had originated somewhere else by a great guy called Jerry, but that had been using it for 25 years in prisons and crisis situations. But this little roundtable method is a guided self-reflection. And so I went to Jerry, to the originators of the process after I'd seen it. And I asked him, can we use that in Ireland? And they gave us permission to use it in Ireland. And we've built Lift around that. Mm-hmm. So Lift is a nationwide movement to lift the level of leadership in the whole country now.
Yeah, so it's leading Ireland's future together. That's what it stands for. And I know within home care, we've certainly been embrace that. And Janine, and we have a number of facilitators who, you know, take us through the reflection. So it's been brilliant. It's just as you said, to sort of think about, you know, how can I improve my leadership skills, and even to, it's not just about managing, it's about, you know, telling the story and bringing people on the journey together. So, and the values as well. I think, well, our organisation is very values based because we look after people. So it fitted really well with us, and it's great as well. I see that you're involved in schools and stuff as well. It's great to educate like young people.
It's amazing, actually. And look, of the 24 founding partners that got on, it was amazing to have you guys on as one of those. It was just fantastic. And when we launched in the May 2018, Mairead, it was just brilliant. You know, it was a very special day, and a lot of very positive energy there saying, we'll do something.
Yeah, it was brilliant. But listen, it's all there to be done. So, and I'm sure it's growing. You've said there that it's growing now to 6,000 people have been through the process.
More. So this time last year, there were 6,000. Now there's over 17,000. Wow. In the next 3 years, we'll have an additional 170,000. So it's growing very rapidly. We spent the first 2 years, and I suppose just from an entrepreneurial journey looking at Lift, the first 2 years, I very intentionally built the team and built the structures and built the systems. If we scaled too quickly, we'd have fallen over. And then we knew once we hit starting year 3, which was in June of last year, that we needed to start scaling. We could start opening the doors for start scaling. So we went from 6,000 to 17,000 in our first year, and we will take on an additional at least 20,000 in the next year, leading to an additional 170,000 in 3 years' time. So
legacy.
It's do you know what, it's not just about the numbers, Mairead, it's about creating positive change. So when somebody gets involved in Lift, it's a bit like going to the gym, but it's for your leadership fitness. So we talk about being leader fit. You know, you go once a week and you become leader fit. You work on you do guided self-reflection to go, okay, honesty and integrity. I hold that as a really high value. But in the last 24 hours, really, have I been totally honest with myself? And have I completely been honest or manipulated the truth at all with anybody else? That's a hard thing. They're hard questions to ask ourselves. Yeah. But that's what Lift does. And it does it about respect. And it does it about listening and positive attitude, and all the time reflecting on the last 24 hours. How positive has my attitude been? And could I... have I got creases in my behavior? Because, right, all the problems in the world and all the problems at our kitchen tables and in our classrooms and in our workplaces come from our behavior. You know, it's as simple as that. So Lift helps us to work on being better every day, which is what it's about.
You know, the way we tell our children, make good choices today, dear. So it's that's you choose how you behave, and it's just teaching them how to do that. So that leads into being a mum then, Joanne. So you're a busy mum as well. So tell us all about, you know, how has that affected your, I suppose, your entrepreneurial journey? Has it helped your perspective, or has it been a challenge? So, but you know what they say, like, ask a busy woman and you get things done. What has it been like for you, or what's your regular days like now as a busy mum?
I have 3 teenagers, 3 girls, Hannah, Leah, and Megan. They're 18, 17, and 14. And I certainly didn't let it get in my way at all. I love being a mum. There's no doubt they're very independent, the 3 of them, because they have a mum that has always worked. I worked through maternity leave. I had no choice. And I had no choice, and I wanted to. So definitely I haven't let it hinder me. Now, at the same time, was it hard? Yes. I mean, I remember sitting and calculating one time the percentage of time that I had spent changing nappies, being pregnant, or working in my 30s, and I think it came to over 100%. You know, like I
need to do that for my.
You know, I was just there going, this is like it is a huge amount, but I didn't let it get in my way, Mairead. Like yourself, I went to bank manager meetings. I brought babies with me. I fed babies in meetings. I interviewed a guy one time. I often wonder what happened to him. I interviewed him, and my baby was in a rocket top beside me and needed to be fed, and I fed her there and then. And I'd say it was a great story for him to tell later on in the pub. But Yeah, I didn't let it get in my way. I went to the UK to a meeting with a business school dean that I really wanted to meet. One of my second child was only 4 weeks old, so I was feeding her, brought her with me. I walked into that meeting room, sat her up on the end of the boardroom table, walked to the other end, met this gentleman, and then and an hour later picked her up and walked out. And I'm still friends with him today. And I remember a few months later him saying to me, "Was that a baby you brought into that room that day?" And do you know what, Mairead? You know, the more I did it, the more I enjoyed it, because that was who I was. That is who I am.
But I think you did make a very good point there, because I mean, I've done a lot of that as well, but it's the role model that you create for your kids. And I know with my older ones, I would say, you know, do you feel that you've missed out because I've always worked? And I go, no, they love the fact that you work. And even especially the older girls, you have all girls, but especially the older girls. So I said, I've raised a bunch of feminists, but you know, because they do say, well, hold on a minute here, you know, and I think it's a good thing that they actually see role model and they can see that for themselves as well. So.
Totally. And they hear me saying, you are important, you, my children, are important, and I would die for you. Absolutely, I would. But there are other things that are important to me too. As you know, for me, Joanne Hessian, these are important to me too, and this is part of my purpose in my life. And
do children any harm to understand that either?
Well, I want them to fulfill their purpose. So, you know, it's modeling what I hope they will do, and, you know, really sort of find out what are they here for and what can they achieve while they're here. So, yeah, I think
there is, I mean, some women in running businesses that would say that they have challenges like not being taken seriously, or, you know, there's some, like, I suppose, unique challenges. Have you ever experienced any of that, like negativity about being a woman in business or going around with your babies in tow?
No, I actually,
pressure, no.
No, I haven't, Mairead. I really haven't. And I mean, so it was a couple of years there that I had the babies with me. No, to be honest, I was probably too tired to notice if somebody was treating me differently. And now, no, I don't think so. I think that generally in meetings, I do notice if a man or a woman treats me differently. But it's, you know, often it's what's going on in their heads. And what's really important is what's going on in my head, and that I stay really firm with what's going on in my head and stay true to myself. Don't let that affect me.
Yeah, exactly. So, Joanne, I suppose, like, you are at this point of your life now where you've, you know, done you know, numerous successful businesses. You've done a lot of good in the world with Lift. And I mean, do you think that this journey that you've had has affected you personally? Has it given you anything different, or do you think your life has been different through those experiences than it would have been, say, working for somebody else?
Totally. I think that the last 3+ years of being in Lift, my life has changed completely. I'm so grateful that it did, Mairead, because I think if I had got into corporate life or sort of stayed in that kind of business focus of sort of efficiency, profit, and so on, I'd be afraid I missed the people thing. And the people thing is so important. And now Lift is totally focused on people's and behavior. And my life has completely changed. In so many ways, because now I'm working on how I lead myself, and equipping others from age 14 all the way to in their 80s, in how we lead ourselves and how we lead the people around us. And that means I have to work on myself every day to get better. Now, sometimes that's good because I've got greater self-awareness about myself now. And so sometimes I don't want to be so aware of how I behave. But if I look at the sort of how I've grown over 51 years, in the last 4 years of being involved in Lift, I have had the greatest growth, personal growth and learning for myself. And I want to lead better. I don't want to be leaving a trail of destruction behind me. And I don't want to be causing, you know, problems around me with friends and people and work colleagues and everything else. So I've a lot more to do. But definitely it has been a very positive.
So you've got to this stage in your life, and especially I can see, I suppose you've developed a lot over the last 4 years. I can see that you're very, very passionate about Lift and the changes that you're making. So what does the future hold? Where do you see yourself now? What's your vision for the future?
So I've given Lift 10 years. So for the next 7 years, when we get to year 10, we would like 10% of the population of the island to be engaged in Lift. So people working on their leadership and leading better, more positive and more ethical leadership is what we're helping people with. So at the end of that 10 years, Ireland can really look back at itself as an island that had the maturity to say we were good with a small g, but we could be good with a big G. And we worked at a grassroots level on our values and what's important to us and how we lead the people around us, one person at a time. And so that's what I am very, very firmly focused on at the moment, is that 10-year goal. Everything is geared towards that 10-year goal. What I'll do after that, I'll be 58 then. I don't know what I'll do after that. And I don't mind either. There will be a next chapter for sure for Lift, and there'll be a next chapter for me. For sure, whether that's with Lift or doing something else, I'm not sure, but I'm very focused on that goal of making sure that not only we equip 10% of the population with values-based leadership and a process to get better all the time, but also that we raise as much awareness as we possibly can, and that I work on myself along the journey too.
Do a bit of cycling and stuff, Joanne, don't you? Are you a keen?
Say that to me again.
Aren't you a keen cyclist from memory?
Yeah, I was. But in COVID, I didn't cycle at all because of the 5K. And then I started I started running. I was walking and running with my daughters, and I'd never run before. My husband said to me, "You cannot take up running. You're 50, like you can't take up running." Anyway, I took it up, and I'm so glad I did, Murray. Do you run?
I did do the Belfast Marathon after my little twins were born to raise money, and everybody said you're going to get into this running bug, but no, sorry. Once I did that,
well, I'm a reluctant.
I find it really time consuming because I suppose I had little ones, so I prefer just Pilates or strength training and stuff like that there. And they said you'll definitely get this running bug. Everybody gets it, but sorry, I didn't.
Well, I haven't quite got it yet, but I have to force myself out there. I went out this morning. I run, like we do a daily huddle with our team every morning. And so I reported on what I'm doing today. And then I put myself off camera and said to them, I'm going running now. So I listen to them while I'm running. So I fit it in that way, and it works really well.
Very good, very good. Joanne, so you're multitasking. So over the years, I'm sure you've got lots of advice and tips. So tell me the best advice you've ever got and the worst advice you've ever got.
It's something you said earlier, Mairead, actually, or touched on earlier. I think the best advice I ever got was focus. There are two things actually. One is today matters. That what we do today matters. So not to get too caught up on all the other things, but just today really matters. So make the most of today. And that's one thing. But another great bit of advice that I got is focus on the vision and the goal, and don't fall in love with the plan. I used to spend ages planning out things and having gorgeous Excel sheets and everything else. And you really sort of, having very detailed plans, but then something changes and you need to change the plan. So I have a great agility around focus on that vision and don't fall in love with the plan to get there, because the plan may need to change. Okay. And so that was great advice. I think probably the worst advice I was given was very early on, where I took advice on how much to charge from somebody who was apparently in the know and told us how much to charge for a training session. And so we didn't do enough research. And we charged that amount, and we ended up working all around the clock, because we'd started off at this amount. Now we got a lot of business because we were so cheap, but it took us ages then to move the price up, because we were then seen at that value pitch level. So that was bad advice that I got early on.
But then I suppose you learned from that as well. So
yeah.
Very interesting advice, Joanne. So you've certainly had an amazing journey, and I'm really excited to watch it over the next number of years to see Lift develop even further, and hopefully we'll be involved more and more with you.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, so I suppose on that note, it's been hugely inspiring talking to you, Joanne, and I just want to thank you for your time and all your tips and advice and sharing your journey with us, and love hearing all about the values-based leadership. I think it's going to be such a huge movement in Ireland through your not-for-profit, and I certainly want to be part of supporting you with all of that. So huge thank you, and hopefully we will we'll get out soon.
Listen, Mairead, we have to, let's get that group together again for sure. Yeah, it's been really great talking to you today as always, Mairead. I love chatting to you. So thank you so much for inviting me on.
No bother. Thank you, Joanne.